What's going on, Poppers? Welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in a story once the credits begin to roll. On today's episode, we will be reviewing the movie Tenet. Tenet is a 2020 film by Christopher Nolan that follows a protagonist's journey through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold into something beyond real time. This movie is not related to the Twilight franchise, even though Robert Pattinson's in it. It's fine. But anyway, this movie is rated PG-13 for intense sequences of violence, action, and some suggestive references and strong language. And as always, spoilers ahead. Okay, Marquise, why don't you try to break down this masterpiece, as some people put it?
Yeah, so Tenet, here's how I've been describing Tenet to everybody, and I've seen it 3 times in the past.
Except for me.
Okay, apparently except for you. But I've seen it 3 times in the past week, and here's how I describe this movie. It's like watching a James Bond movie sped up at 2.5 speed and then throw in Inception. It's just like, it is utter chaos and confusion for 2.5 hours. Like, if you go on Wikipedia, this is like a description of the film. It's like the film follows a secret agent who learns to manipulate the flow of time to prevent an attack from the future that threatens to annihilate the present world. Right? Just one of these like mega, type plots. And it is just the amount that they pack. Like, this movie moves so fast, and to think that it's still 2.5 hours, like if they were to actually flesh out every scene or every event or moment
or concept,
concept, this would have been a 4-hour film easily. But they pack, and I mean they pack a lot into 2.5 hours, to the point you don't get rest. Like, the movie starts from the get-go. And one thing I know, so the movie starts with a bank robbery scene. Or no, sorry, not bank robbery scene. My bad. I'm thinking about what I'm about to say. So the movie starts with the scene where these people infiltrate an opera house.
Yeah.
And then take people captive. But it is incredibly reminiscent of the bank robbery scene in The Dark Knight. Which I was like, that makes sense. That. Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, I could totally see that, actually.
Both movies start right in the middle of some event that's happening that's kicking off the rest of the story. So when I was watching, I was like, wow, this even sounds even the soundtrack, this sounds.
Yeah, it was it was like a chaotic order, if it makes sense. Yeah. Everything was really all over the place, but at the same time there was a rhythm to that opening scene, and people were following
exactly
along
like The Dark Knight.
Like that.
You could almost watch them side by side. I bet you there will be an incredible amount of similarities
in terms of the pace. Yeah, exactly. In terms of the pacing and stuff like that.
But yeah, so that first scene kicks off. It's great, cool, but it took only maybe 20 minutes for me to be like, okay, what's going on? The movie, it's just hard for me to even give any type of description other than the general plot. Because if I were to describe the events of this movie, it'd take a whole nother 30, 40 minutes in itself.
For sure. There's no way.
And so, I mean, as simple as I could say it, is there's a CIA agent who doesn't even have a name. He is never referenced by a name in the entire movie. He only refers to himself as the protagonist. And so you're following him, the CIA agent, and he's trying to stop some arms dealer from collecting something, but he finds out that he has to go back in time to do it, but he's not really going back in time as more as he's moving backwards through time. So he's able to move backwards through time even in present scenarios though. And it's just it gets really, really weird. Because maybe it's 30 minutes into the film, maybe, where they add in this time travel aspect. And it's oh my gosh, it gets so incredibly weird because
it's convoluted
because it's moving, the story is moving with the arrow of time. It's moving forward, but characters, and not only characters but objects, are moving backwards as the movie's moving forward through time. And so you have to start to wonder, and then there's and then people have different versions of themselves. People have versions of themselves that are moving backwards while they're moving forward, and they can notice each other. And so the whole thing is wild. But with that being said, somehow Christopher Nolan actually did make a comprehensible plot to this movie. And when I say comprehensible, you will not comprehend it on the first watch, probably not the second. I barely started to comprehend it on the third watch. And so this is a movie that you will, if you're looking to go see a movie once and like get something out of it or enjoy it, you won't. Once you finish this movie, all you'll be thinking about is how that made no sense. And so unless you're willing to give this multiple tries, eventually I almost just don't even recommend it, because it's such, you will have no idea what's going on. Like the dialogue is super quick. You don't really get
kind of clunky.
It's clunky. You don't get to build emotion behind the characters. Like, there's no reason why you would care about the main character or anybody. Like, the only person that you're able to feel any type of way for is her name is Kat, and she's the wife of the antagonist. And she's the only person that you have any emotional care for whatsoever, because she's the only person whose scenario you're really told about. Every other person, you're never told anything about their scenario as much as they're just a character in the story that's moving the plot along. And she's the only one where, like, you get to feel for her, you get to hear her sorrows, her pain, and stuff like that. But other than that, like, other than her, there's not a single other character that you really connect with or relate to. You don't get to know much about them. They're just moving this whole plot along. And so unless you could really get into the plot, then it's just kind of like, wow. But that being said, there are some really great action scenes. Andy, I know you'll talk more about that because you enjoyed them, but like, there's some really great action scenes, and it's a cool idea. And at first, because I watched it with my roommate, when we first watched it, I said, this is a cool idea that seems like it didn't work. But now, having watched it 3 times, I would say it did work, but it's so convoluted, you're just never going to get it on the first or second try. Like,
For sure.
And like, even I know if I watch this movie 5 more times, I would get new stuff each time. But it's just the plot line is like, you're moving through time in different ways, different objects and people are moving through time in different ways. And it's like a heist film too, where you have to get this object, but this object isn't even in your timeline. Like, it's so beyond. I'm actually reading on Wikipedia that Christopher Nolan took more than 5 years to write the screenplay after deliberating about Tenet's central ideas for over a decade.
Yeah, I feel like somewhere along that timeline, he just lost it. Like, I feel like maybe he's gone insane, like, as he was trying to come up with the plot. I think what also just confusing as a viewer is because, like, is that, like, I have no problem with time travel movies. Like, they're fine. Especially if they're done well, like, they could be really enjoyable. Mm-hmm. But, like, how this movie does it is, like, instead of, like, they evoke, it's so linear. Mm-hmm. Or, like, so if we, like, let's look at our current time, like, now, like, we are moving forward in our lives. Like, you might not feel like you are, but you are moving forward in your lives. When they reference going back in time, it's actually inverting the time. So you are literally, like, if you were to watch TV and press the rewind button, imagine that for, like, the moving backwards in time. So, like, but you yourself are moving forward while the time itself is moving backwards. So, like, there's a scene where the protagonist, when he first goes into the reversion, the inversion, like, reality, they're like, he stepped on a puddle, but instead of, like, the puddle splashing, it, like, reforms itself after the splash. Or, like, you see, like, seagulls flying backwards, ships sailing backwards. Like, everything is moving backwards while he is moving forward, and it's just so weird.
It takes a minute for your mind to get. I mean, it doesn't even get used to it; just kind of starts to accommodate it. But, like,
and it's just, like, one of those things that's, like, for me, like, it started off so awesome. Like, I absolutely love that opera house scene.
That was a great scene.
It was so cool. And, like, I was just like, wow, like, what am I getting myself into? And I just remember that first time, like, going through, like, they were explaining the inversion element by explaining, like, bullets moving back in time by, like, it's like you're not actually like shooting the bullet is being caught by the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like that just it just doesn't work for me. And so like if you're not going to grasp that especially when they were first explained to, like, I didn't even understand it when they were first explaining it to me, and the movie just kind of assumes that every single person is going to understand it based off of the explanation that they give. And like they like show like him like shooting, quote unquote, the gun, but the bullet coming back. They show him like catching the bullet, like catching like an unfired bullet on the table, and like them spinning it and stuff like that. And it still just didn't make sense. And so like if you didn't understand it from that brief explanation of the bullet like example that they used, you are screwed. Like you just cannot catch it. And like it's like such like a fast-paced movie. Like I was watching it a second time with Susan, and I told her like, you cannot be on your phone. Like, and it's not like me trying to be like it's like if you are on your phone, I was like, if you're on your phone, if you blink, if you burp at the wrong moment, like you will miss a critical detail. And if you miss the wrong detail, you're gonna be lost in this movie. It was just, the action scenes were amazing, and especially when you consider the context behind it, and when like I think the inversion, like normal linear time track, brings it to a new level. So like my favorite scene of the movie was this, like the car chase scene.
Oh, that was so cool.
It was so cool. So like it takes you through like the reversion, like the linear track, the first half of the movie. And so like Sator, the name of the bad guy, he is trying to collect all of these pieces from the Doomsday device, because people from the future are like, we messed up the future, so the only way we can save the future is by destroying the past, which I recognize, and I'm sure you do too, is stupid. But nevertheless, they're trying to catch down the Doomsday device. So the protagonist has it, and he's trying to keep it away from Sator. Sator is trying to get it. And so the protagonist also has a thing for the wife, Kat. And so...
Well, I don't... Do they like actually say that he has a
I
thing
don't
for
think
her?
they have like a romantic thing, but I think that he cares for her. But that being said,
he does care for her. 100%.
But you don't, again, like, because of the fact that this movie has so many things going on, you don't know for sure if it's in a romantic setting or a friendship way or just what. But I'm willing to say that it could potentially be romantic because of the fact that he gave up part of the Doomsday device in order to save her. I don't think that you would necessarily do that for a friend unless you like really care about that. Like, sorry, Marqueze, if there's someone trying to get a Doomsday device for me and it's between you and the Doomsday device, like, I'm thinking about the world here, and I hope that you would do the same for me. But the cart, so like it takes place in like the reversion, and like he's driving away with it, but then out of nowhere, from like in front of the protagonist, is Sator driving backwards. And then you realize that Sator is actually inverted while everyone else is reverted, or whatever you want to call it. And like then that's when the protagonist goes through the inversion machine. He's trying to catch up to everything. But he wrecks his car, and then the reverted stuff actually saw the car crash to begin with. It was a very amazing scene. Like, I absolutely loved the car chase scene. It was probably one of the few scenes in this movie that like I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Like, it nailed it. That and the opera house scene were probably the two best ones in the movie. But it just was like, it was just so much packed into a 2.5 hour movie. I honestly think you mentioned earlier that you don't think Christopher Nolan like accomplished what he was trying to get out to. I think he did.
Well, I didn't say that.
Oh, I thought you did.
No.
My bad. Sorry for putting words in your mouth. Let me revert back. Let me go to the inverted self so I can replace that. Christopher Nolan, I think 100% accomplishes what he sets out for. But what I think he's setting out for is not what audience love. Because I think that...
That's fair.
what he is trying to do is trying to get people to rewatch this movie over and over again in order to catch the details that were missed in the previous watching. And so like when you first watch this movie, you yourself are in the reverted or like in the normal linear timeline. I don't know what the phrase is, but like you're in a normal timeline watching it for the first time. And so it's completely meta. It's so meta that he did this. But like when you watch it again, you are almost as if you are the inverted self, rewatching everything, understanding what's going on a little bit more. And each time you watch it, you get it a little bit more. And so I think he accomplished what he was trying to do at the expense of the audience. And I think that, you know, when I watched it the first time, it was a 2.5 hour movie that felt like it was 5 hours. And when I rewatched it a second time, it really went by much faster. Like I don't know why, and I don't know if it was the same for you, but when I was watching it the second time, like because I had gone through it, I was like, okay, I actually do kind of understand the story here. I don't fully grasp every concept that he's laying out here, but like I do understand it. Like when they did the bullet example earlier, like the second time around, I got it. And I think I might have ruined it for Susan. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did, because when I was watching the movie, whenever there's something that happened that I understood, I was like, oh, and like I asked her like, oh, what did you think of the movie? And she goes, well, whenever you realize something, you did that, and it kind of took me out of the experience. I was just like, my bad. I was just really excited that I understood parts of the movie, and so like that was pretty
like
cool.
Finally it just kind of connects to you, like
it just kind of
clicked. This is going on.
But like, yeah, it just was, there was so much going on in this movie, and I hate the fact that like you really don't connect with any of the characters outside of Kat. Like it's just like if I'm watching a movie, like I want to feel emotionally involved in the movie in some way, shape, or form. And at no point in this movie did I feel any sort of attachment. Like they could, like for all I care, Seder could have succeeded.
Yeah,
and I would have been like, okay, cool. Like the world is over because they couldn't stop him. Whatever. I don't even understand like I still don't understand that final action sequence where they're having like half the squad go into normal time and half the squad in inverted time because they're trying to stop the doomsday device from blowing up. But, you know, spoilers alert again, because you should have gotten the first one, but in case you didn't, spoilers alert again, the device still goes off, but I guess it didn't go off where it was supposed to, and it didn't destroy the fabric of time. There's so many things here that it's just like, why did they send pieces of this doomsday device to destroy the past in order to save their present? Like, unless there's some sort of future technology that would make it okay, like I don't understand it. So like the whole premise of it wasn't great. It wasn't good. And like Seder as a villain was like one of those cliche villains that's like, like it's unlike when you watch like the Joker, or if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, like some of the bad guys in that show, or just like other bad guys where they have redeeming qualities. Like this person, Seder, had cancer, and he's like, if I'm going to die, everyone has to die. Like that's literally
very interesting.
His motives is like, if I can't live, no one can live. If I can't have my wife, no one can have my wife. And so like, it's like that's all you know about him, is that because he's gonna die, like he wants to kill everyone else.
He wants to take the world with him.
Like, I'm not saying I have to fall in love with every single movie villain, but like if you're a movie villain because you just want to kill everyone because you're going to die anyway, like I instantly like just like,
that was one of the weakest ideas for a villain, in my opinion.
Exactly. I
thought that was so weak.
Exactly. So it was silly. It was just silly.
Yeah. It was a very silly idea, like that. He, like, it wasn't for him to get rich or whatever. It was just like he had gotten everything he wanted. And so the fact that he was no longer going to live meant that the world couldn't. I'm just like, that seems so extreme. Like, and it's not like he's just like even like pressing the button for a bomb. Like he is purposely searching through the past, present, and future in order to find these doomsday devices just to kill everybody so that everyone can be dead if he's dead too. Like it just seems so extreme for such a wild little thought that doesn't even make sense. That I'm just kind of like, yeah, like that's the part where they lost me. Like they should. Like, I think Christopher Nolan should have created a better reason for why he wanted the Doomsday device.
Exactly, and like for me, it's also just like. He's just a random arms dealer. Like, I'm not to say that like arms dealers aren't like terrible people, but like we don't know. Like the movie didn't provide any context on like the scope of Sator's impact in the world, like or anything. Like to me, it would make a little bit more sense if like this was like a world leader, like some sort of like president or something like that, that like had power, that we knew had impact on the world in their current role, instead of just like an arms dealer that we already know is like a bad person to begin with. Because I think that would be so much more impactful to be like, wow, he is a corrupt like this person's a corrupt politician that's trying to take out even more on the world, which would also explain like why he's taking like a pay in from the future, because he like Sator was getting paid in like pallets of gold to like do everything that he was doing. It's like that's how he was able to be successful. Like I feel like I'd be more like attached to a villain that like you knew he had like, or they had like a global impact instead of just a random arms dealer.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. Like, I mean, yeah, he probably had some big impact, but nevertheless, you can't really tell. Like, they don't show it to you. They don't show you the repercussion of his work. Like that's what I'm saying. Like this movie, it's weird to think that in a 2.5 hour movie, they still felt like they were cutting out a ton that was needed to like give more depth to the story. Like it's almost like you're getting a skeleton of a story. Exactly. You're just it's just like, yeah, we can only give you this much because we got to go move on to the next scene, to the next part. And so that's what was most frustrating about it for me. Like I'd rather just watch a 4-hour film than get this like very minimal, we got to rush you through this process. And like, I don't even mind being good.
I was just going to say, and we're just talking about like the plot details. Yeah. Like part of the other issue, which I know you talked about, is the dialogue. Like it was like so hard for me to get into it the first time around, because of just how awkward the dialogue was. Like it really felt like they were reading straight off of the script. Like it just did not seem organic. Like the conversations didn't seem real at certain times. Like it just was weird. It was hard to get into because of just how awkward the writing was.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, I felt like it was hard to get into, or I mean, it wasn't even that the writing was awkward, but like even just the mixing was weird. So I've had multiple people mention this too, of how like the mixing in the movie is like you hear all these other sounds very, very loud, and all the like music and everything, like it's very extravagant, but then the dialogue will be very low, and so it's hard to connect to the dialogue because it's almost like the dialogue almost seems like background noise at points compared to either the soundtrack or just little sounds going on in the film.
I mean, there's a scene when like the protagonist is wearing a mask because he's about to interact with his past self, which is messed up to begin with, because everyone knows that if you interact with your previous self, then you like time implodes in itself because of that. But anyway, he's wearing a mask and you hear him breathing over everything else, which I'm like, I understand he's wearing a mask. Like, I don't need to hear I don't need to hear his breath.
Yeah, no, it's weird. But with all that being said, as much as we're talking crap about this movie, like I definitely do see how you could consider this a modern masterpiece. I see it definitely in that this, as complex as the script is, I do think that if you actually gave the time to sit there, look at it, and study it, whatever, you'd be like, oh, yeah, no, this actually makes sense. This makes sense, and somehow he got this to make sense. It's not easy to digest. You're gonna have to like actually study it and pick it apart and like put pieces and whatnot. That being said, though, he found a way to get this script to make sense, and that's to me the masterpiece part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, bad mixing, dialogue wasn't great. You don't get to learn about the characters, but just simply in terms of what he was able to do with a script, I thought that was fantastic.
I can agree with that. And like I was saying, like I did enjoy it more the second time around, and like I was starting to come around to see how people can consider this a masterpiece, consider it to be a good movie. I think that it's one of these movies that's like hard to imagine committing yourself to multiple viewings because it's so long.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think that it is, if you like you said, if you have the time to do so, like it is definitely worth the rewatch, because it's one of those things that's like it makes more sense each time you watch it.
Yeah, 100%. That being said,
no, you're doing it. Don't even try it. Marquise, why don't you tell us how this movie ends and what you think the prediction, where you think this movie takes off?
A week.
Nice try, though. You really, I told you that I didn't want to do this part. You get to do it. You tried it, though.
I want to see what you come up with. So, okay. So the movie ends with them. So if y'all remember, Andy had mentioned about how like there's this towards the end a scene where there's two teams, one going forward in time, one going backward in time. And the idea of this is that also these teams are for the CIA apparently, or whatever. They're trying to stop this bad guy, Sator, from getting the Doomsday device. But anyway, so there's a team going forward in time, there's a team going backwards in time, and they're doing what's called a pincher, which is you come from opposite ends of time. That way you could kind of pinch in the middle in the present and have people on both sides in order to accomplish your goal or grab whatever you're trying to grab. That way no one comes from the opposite end of time and like surprises you or whatever. Which this it gets super convoluted and complex. But yeah, so that's happening, and the movie ends with Sator, the bad guy, basically getting ready to take his own life. And because as soon as his heart stops and he dies is when like the bomb goes off or whatever. But Kat, his wife, she already wants to kill him. She can't wait till he dies. She already wants to kill him, but she needs to keep him alive solely for the fact that this device doesn't go off. Eventually, she's just kind of fed up. She kills him. Somehow, I can't remember how exactly, but somehow the device still doesn't go off or kill people.
Because it's actually like the signal to the people in the future that the device is ready. Because if you remember, his henchman is the one that actually is supposed to be the one that sets it off.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was weird. But anywho, so he died. She like throws his body off a boat and then jumps off the boat. And then the last scene is the protagonist, Neil, who is played by Robert Pattinson, who's like his friend or partner or whatever. And then another one of the CIA agents. All three of them are standing there in like this kind of desert area. And they break up the Doomsday device into three pieces. And they go, all right, we all need to go to different places or even different timelines, whatever. But we all need to go to different places, drop off these devices or hide them somewhere and then kill ourselves so that nobody can ever find these devices again. Because that's, you also learned during the movie, that's what the actual scientists did who made the device. Once they realized how powerful it was, they hid it and killed themselves so nobody could find it. But someone ended up still finding it. So it is what it is. Kind of happens with time travel. But so that's what they're supposed to do at the end, right? The protagonist, Neil, and this other CIA operative. So eventually the other CIA guy walks away and then Neil starts to walk away too. And the protagonist asks him, so who started this? Or, whose mission was this? And then Neil goes, it's yours. This is your mission from the entire time. You're the one who set this in motion. This is your whole plan. It's just a past version of yourself or a future version of yourself or whatever time that is setting this plan in motion. And Neil tells the protagonist, you're in the pincher. You're in your own pincher. You're moving through time one way. The other version of yourself is moving through the opposite way. And so he kind of gives this hint saying, you're right in the middle of this, or you're just beginning. Like you have not finished your journey yet. And so then Neil's character walks off. So then I'm pretty sure that's where the movie just ends, like right there, basically. So obviously my prediction goes, all right, we're not finished with the pincher. There's more to the story. There's more that needs to be done. The question is, what?
Exactly.
Okay, so we at least know this. So one is they need to hide this doomsday device, right? So if he's in a pincher and he's supposed to almost somehow meet his other self from the middle, is he transferring the device to his other self, his other form of self, so that that person could go and hide it at some place in time? But even then, I guess that confuses me, because if the original bad guy was able to go back in time and get these pieces anyways, even after the scientists had headed and killed themselves, why couldn't they do that again in the future? Or why couldn't a different bad person do it? Because I don't know. It just seems like a lost place to me. Like if someone could go back in time to that original moment, then there's really nothing you can do about it. But yeah, so that being said, I feel the protagonist he's in the middle of a pincher with the other version or time of himself. And they end up meeting to go and try to hide this doomsday device. Dude, there's almost really like I can't even go anywhere with this because I have so little to go off of because I'm still just barely even understanding the movie.
No, that's fair. That's totally fair. I think that we're on the same track. We're on the same wavelength. The same timeline, if you will. So the movie actually ends with Priya, who is another arms dealer, who notifies the protagonist about Sator. Her and her henchman in a car trying to kill Kat and her son Max. Mm-hmm. And the protagonist is there, kills both of them, because if Kat is killed before any of this happens, then if Kat is killed before any of this happens, then no one is there to stop Sator from killing himself and triggering past Sator from killing himself. Mm-hmm. So the movie ends with the protagonist killing those two people in order for the events to unfold. My question for you, before I dive into my theory, is: do you happen to know did you happen to hear the theory of Max's full name?
No, but I did hear that. I don't know if you're leading to this, but
Max's full name is Maximilian. Yeah. Or according to this theory, Max's full name is Maximilian. And if you inverse the last four letters of Maximilian, it is Neil.
Neil, yeah.
And so I think that the second movie to Tenet is how the creation of the organization, because the organization's name is Tenet, which is a palindrome. Like, it's the same spelled forwards as it is backwards. Mm-hmm. So
educational podcast.
Boom, there you go. Your one educational fact per podcast, guaranteed. So I think that the second movie is about the formation of Tenet, how it was created, mm-hmm. How the protagonist recruits Maximilian, turns him into Neil. We don't know how he does it, but I imagine that there's some sort of event where he turns into Neil. Maybe there's I don't know what happens, but I think that at some point Maximilian turns into Neil. Uh-huh. And the protagonist tells new Neil that he has to be a part of this mission in order to save time. And the more I think about it, the more I think that the future people telling Sator to form this doomsday device to destroy the past was actually more of a plot, because the future might already, they already said the future is destroyed, mm-hmm. but I think that the future people believe that either Neil or the protagonist is some sort of savior, but they needed to help the protagonist realize his full potential. And so I don't think the future people ever intended for the past to get destroyed. I think they wanted to recruit this person into helping save the future that we don't know what it looks like just yet. And so the second half of this pincher is recruiting Neil, forming the pincher, and then saving the future from whatever it looks like.
I mean, it's Yeah, that's just because any theory out there. Yeah, no, that's because so I heard that Neil was Max before, and there's even a scene actually, and I caught it on the third time around watching with you. There's even a scene where one of the characters, I think it's that other CIA guy, asks, how do we know that they'll be there, or how do we know that she'll be saying this or whatever? And Neil goes, oh, trust me, like I know, and Neil says it with like an in-depth knowledge of like, I was there on that boat, I was that child, like trust me, like I know, like they'll be there, they'll be right there.
That's true.
And so when he says that, I was like, oh, this actually, okay, that might be a legit theory then, that like Neil really was Max, Kat's son on that boat.
Exactly.
Which is just wild for to go back in time and then see like your past self as a kid, and like I don't know, like the plot is so convoluted to the point to where like even if it works, it's like being held up by a thread,
Exactly. And what's annoying is that like as I was watching it the second time, like I was trying to find themes that could potentially help me. Mm-hmm. So like one theme that I was trying to confirm that I think might help, might not help people is colors. Mm-hmm. So what they do in that final action sequence, and actually you see it a couple times in the movie, but the action sequence is probably the easiest way to explain this, is the people that are moving forward in time, the linear track, are wearing red patches. And the people that are inverted are wearing blue patches. And you actually see this a couple of times. Like when the protagonist meets one of the other CIA agents, or even just meets the other CIA agents and operatives, like they're wearing red patches. There's like a scene after the car chase where the protagonist is on one side of a glass, but Sator and Kat are on another side of the glass. And the side that the protagonist on is lit red and the other side is lit blue to kind of signify that there's that one side is inverted, one side is normal. And then also just throughout the movie, I noticed that in the background, a lot of people are wearing red. There's like red all over the place where other people are wearing red. Boats are red, buildings are red, like just different things are red. And I'm not able to say for certain that this is how you can tell what is linear, what is reverted, but I do notice that when things are inverted, there are more blue things than versus when you know it's linear, there are more red things. And I think that might be a way to help others tell when it's linear and when it's not, because to be honest, like for all we know, Sator could be completely inverted the entire time, and we just don't realize it. I don't know if that's for sure, but I think that with that concept in mind, it helped me in certain points of the movie understand, okay, this is linear, like which characters are linear, which characters are not. And there's like a point when they're on the boat, like the first time they're on the boat, there's something red in Kat's background to let you know that Kat is in the normal timeline, but there's something in the background of Sator that is blue to kind of signify maybe he is in the inverted timeline. So I think that there are subtle things that can help you decipher, but I, again, I'm not 100% sure that is true. It's just something that I think has helped me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to. I mean, I'll probably eventually watch it again with somebody, and so next time I watch it, I'll have to catch that. Actually, I think I even took a note down for another thing I noticed in this film, because once again, there's just so many. Real quick, I actually want to shout out though. One of my favorite scenes was the fight scene in the diner. I thought that, or the restaurant. I thought that was gnarly.
The fight scene in the restaurant.
So it's when he's talking to Kat, it's the first time you hear Kat's story, talking about how he gave me an option between my freedom or my son and blah blah blah. And then like the goons come in and Kat's like, they're not gonna kill you, they're just gonna, hurt you or whatever.
Oh yes.
And so so she leaves and like the protagonist walks in the kitchen to follow her. Like there's these 5 guys surrounding him and he's like, I ordered my hot sauce 10 minutes ago. They can't go, but they're beating him up. And then they're about to like mash his hand and just a gnarly fight scene breaks out where he just starts nailing them. And
which I don't know if you noticed this, but the cutting board was red.
No,
which was another thing that helped me kind of keep track was like, okay, this is the normal timeline. The cutting board is red.
Dude, I'm definitely getting. See, now I'm gonna have to go back and watch this a 4th time. But yeah, so like he beats up these goons and like I don't know, it's very almost Dark Knight-ish. I mean, I guess to say like it's a really good fight scene.
Maybe we find out that the protagonist is actually
actually the Dark Knight. He said he's Dark Knight. But yeah, overall, I thought that scene was really good. And then what I was gonna say earlier. Also, I find that it's conversation. So I don't know if you noticed it, but I found the conversation between the waiter, and this is when the protagonist goes to speak with, I can't remember the
guy who plays name,
but yeah, I know
Alfred,
the guy who plays Alfred or whatever.
Alfred from Batman, yeah.
Yeah, but so he goes to have a conversation with him, right? And the protagonist is supposed to portray a billionaire. He's supposed to be portraying a wealthy billionaire who's like collecting art or whatever. And so we'll just call him Alfred for the sake of it. But the old guy who plays Alfred, he's just like, if you're gonna play, the part of a billionaire, you're gonna need better clothing or better suits or whatever, right? But it's funny. So when the protagonist walks in and he's talking to the waiter, the waiter is treating him 100% like you don't belong here. Like every time the protagonist asks a question or says something, the waiter's just kind of like, whatever. And I love the last scene where the protagonist orders some food and he's standing there talking with Alfred, and then he finishes conversation and the waiter comes with the food and the protagonist goes, hey, can you box it up for me? And the waiter goes, absolutely not. And that was the first time I thought about it. I was like, wow, that's rude, especially for what's probably a 5-star restaurant. But then I thought about it and I was like, oh yeah, rich people don't box up food.
That was like literally my first thought was like, wow, like, yeah, like
that makes sense.
Of course, it makes sense. Like rich places don't do that.
Yeah,
it totally made sense to me.
Every time you eat, you're getting fresh food. Like you're not eating leftovers if you're a billionaire, or rich millionaire. Like you're not taking.
They lack the ability to box foods. It's actually disgusting to them.
Yeah, it's just like, no, if you ordered it, don't want it, throw it away. Order something new next time. And I just thought that was such a interesting. I don't know. It was something that like I just never would have caught. I thought was super funny. Also, there's another thing that's important to mention is even though we call the main character the protagonist, but there's an important part where the main character talks to another arms dealer in this movie. Her name's Priya, I believe. Yes. But he's talking to her and he refers to himself as the protagonist, and she goes, "A protagonist. You're a protagonist, not."
Doesn't he mention at the end of the movie that he's the protagonist?
Yeah, so he refers to himself as the. She says A. You're just a protagonist, not the protagonist.
Ooh.
And I definitely, from what we could tell, 100% Neil seems to be a protagonist.
Yeah,
100%.
Neil, I think I've seen a theory out there that Kat is also a protagonist in some regard.
Yeah, I can see that too. Kat's the one that actually kills the bad guy and that has the most in contact with him.
And what's also kind of funny is that we talked about this during when you were going over the conclusion, but part of the reason why Kat hates her husband is because she thinks that he's cheating on her, but you find out at the end of the movie that the person that she thought he was cheating with was herself.
It was her. Yeah.
So really, if she found that out, do you think that she really would have hated her husband?
I don't think that's the main reason she hated her
husband. I think that was the final straw, though. I think that that was the one thing that, at least, from what the movie shows us, because the movie doesn't tell us a whole lot. Well, so I think that was that was like one of the, because that was definitely the one detail that we were able to see that we're like, wow, she saw a woman driving off the yacht as they're showing up with their kid. So like she's thinking that he's having an affair with her on her.
Yeah, but from what I remember, the main problem that she had with her husband was that her husband kept her hostage, basically, because he asked her to evaluate some piece of art or whatever, which then she evaluated for a certain high price. And then it came out that that was a forgery, which she didn't know about. But now he was using that against her, like saying, I'll get the police involved. If you try to leave me, if you try to do any of this stuff, I'll tell the police that you certified this forgery, and then you're going to go to jail. And so I can't remember if that was if the idea that he was cheating on her was the initial reason, but the reason they kind of keep pushing is the fact that he's holding her hostage, that he's not letting her leave, and he will use her son against her, or even be willing to call the police.
True. I don't know, man. All I know is that she caught herself cheating, and she was really pissed off about it, or upset about it.
All right, because I feel like it's just a convoluted movie. Would you recommend this to somebody?
Okay, so if we're looking at our rating scale, where we look at sizes of popcorn bags and kind of decide like 1 through 10, like how we would rate it. So like a small is like a 1 to 3, a medium bag is like a 4 to 6, a large is like a 7 to a 9, and a big 10 is like a big bucket, like drop what you're doing right now, go see this movie. I want to give this a small so bad. I want to give this movie a small so bad. Here's the thing. If you are not going to see this movie again, like if you are the type of person, which no fault to this type of person, I have no problems with this, but like if you know you are only going to watch a movie one time and not go back to it, this movie is an easy small, because like I just don't think you will fully understand it the first time you watch this movie. Like I think that there's so many even if you think you get it, there's something that you're missing that makes you know that you're not missing, that you don't get it. So like for me, if I know that you are not going to watch this movie multiple times, it's a small. And I think that that's what I really hate, is that I think Christopher Nolan made this movie on purpose so that people watch this movie over and over again, which I don't think should be like the main drive of a movie. So for me, if I know you're going to watch this movie once, it's a small. If you're going to watch it again, shoot, I don't know. I think each time you watch it, it does get slightly better. I'm going to stick with a small. I'm going to stay there. I'm not going to speculate any further. I'm going to stay there just because I just cannot forgive the fact that like this movie was made so you have to watch this movie over and over again. And like in order for someone to like, I can't measure how someone is going to perceive it again. Like I really liked it again after watching it a second time. But like, I also recognize that like
my roommate watched it a second time, and he was like, "This makes no sense." So
yeah,
second time is
I mean, there are also people out there that watched it a second time that didn't make sense. And so like for me, I gave 5 hours of my life to this movie, and I'm starting to appreciate it. But like, I don't want to sit and give myself in increments of 2.5 hours in order to like a movie. Like I should love a movie from the get-go, and each time I watch it, I should get something different from it. Or, even if I don't get something different from it, it should give me an emotion. Like I was saying earlier, like I should feel some sort of emotional connection to it each time I watch it in order for me to get something out of the experience. And if I don't get that initial hook the first time, it's just hard for me to give this movie any more props. So like, I'm sticking with the small. I'd love to know what you think, because I'm sure you're going to come hit me with like a large or something.
No, big bucket, bro. No, I'm checking.
Get out of here.
No, I mean, I if someone gave this movie a big bucket, I would not at all be surprised. I would be curious to hear the explanation, but there's plenty of people who I think would give this movie a big bucket. Some people call this Christopher Nolan's best film, like a most unexpected.
That's a slap in the face.
like I mean, well, so I was talking with that film friend of mine I mentioned from earlier, and one of the things he mentioned is that there was a director. I'm gonna have to ask him for the name about it, but that there was a director back in, I think it was 50s, maybe 50s, 60s, that said a film should only like a good for a film to be good, you should be able to get everything you need from it during that one viewing. Like obviously you could ponder it more, whatever, but everything you need to get, you should be able to get from one single viewing. But that's one way of looking at a film. For others, this could be the most confusing experience. This can make no sense the first time. It can actually never make sense. If they want to create a plot or whatever that never makes sense, that's fine too. But as long as you're getting some experience from the film. And I would actually say I lean more on that side. I don't need to understand everything that's going on, but if the film could give me an experience that is memorable or enjoyable or just outside of this world, outside of my norm, then I'm fine with it. With that being said, I still don't think Tenet did that for me. So I'm fine with Tenet being confusing. I'm fine with it taking multiple views to kind of get and understand. But I guess it didn't give me, like, if the action sequences were so often and so amazing to the point to where I kind of could care less about the story, that'd be different. But they weren't, like, they were good, but they were here and there, you know, Especially in a 2.5-hour movie, there weren't enough to fill it up the entire way. If the characters were, you know, as like passionate enough or whatever, that'd be one thing. But it's just like, it's a convoluted plot, and it's a convoluted plot, but the best thing about it is the plot. And so it's just kind of like, if there were other things to pull me into the movie, I'd probably give it, I could consider it, give it a pretty high rating. But to be honest, I'm gonna give this like a medium. I don't think it deserves a small, but I'll give it a strong medium in terms of, I do think this is actually a pretty good movie, but I think very, 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 very few people are going to be able to actually take away with this being a good movie. I think everybody who watches this movie will at least be intrigued, though. Like, oh my goodness.
No, I think after this, I agree with you up until that last sentence. I was not intrigued. I was pissed. I was mad. I was just like, I think his earlier movies like Inception, like I haven't seen Inception in quite a while, but I remember everyone was buzzing about that movie. Yeah. And I think there were a fair amount of people that didn't like it for similar reasons to what we're talking about now. But I think the vast majority of people would say that Inception was a good movie. Yeah. Because like it did exactly what you're saying. Like it kind of left you confused, but it kept you intrigued. Makes sense, it made more sense. And so like when you rewatch the movie, that's when you're in that moment where like you're catching those details that you missed the first time around. So like I'm picking Inception because that was another Christopher Nolan movie. So like kind of compare his two films. Like it just was so wildly different. And I think that that's fair for Christopher Nolan to try to do, because like he's made Inception, he's made Memento, he's made Interstellar. So like he's very much that like time travel like type person. So he's got to do something different. But this wasn't it for me, dog. Like this was a swing and a miss. This was a strikeout in the bottom of the ninth to have your team lose the World Series. Like this wasn't for me.
You know what? That's completely fair.
That being said, even though this movie was confusing, I would love to know what your continuation of Tenet is. Do you agree with what you say, or do you think that we're completely wrong, that we're missing the mark? Please follow us on Twitter at PoppinPredict and on Instagram at poppinpredictions.pod to let us know your thoughts. on how you think this movie should continue. Also, feel free to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep popping, everyone.
Peace.